On the morning of the 12th of June 1962, a guard on Alcatraz walked the cell block doing the count. 3 men were in their bunks with their backs turned. That was normal. He reached in to wake one of them, and the man's head came off in his hand. It was made of soap, paper, and real human hair, cut from the floor of the prison barbershop. The men had been gone for hours. Every escape in this video worked the same way, not by being stronger than the people holding them, by finding the one thing those people never thought to look at. Alcatraz was built to be the prison you could not leave. An island in San Francisco Bay, freezing water, brutal currents, 1.5 miles of it in every direction. Frank Morris and 2 brothers, John and Clarence Anglin, worked on it for about a year. They started with the ventilation openings at the back of their cells, small grills and damp, aging concrete. They widened them by scraping, night after night, with sharpened spoons taken from the mess hall. Later, they built a crude drill out of a stolen vacuum cleaner motor. The noise was the problem, and they solved it with the music hour. Every evening, the prison allowed accordion practice. That's when the digging happened. The debris went out in their pockets. The holes went behind painted cardboard. Behind the cells was a utility corridor full of pipes, unwatched, because there was no reason to watch a space with no exit. So they climbed it. They got onto the roof of the cell block and made a workshop up there, out of sight, and that is where they built the raft. 50-odd prison-issue raincoats, cut up and stitched together and sealed with heat from steam pipes. And they built the heads. Soap, toilet paper, cement dust, paint, and hair swept up from the barbershop floor. Enough to fool a torch beam at 3 in the morning. On the night of the 11th of June, 3 men went up through a roof vent, down a drain pipe, over the fence, and onto the water. What happened next? Nobody knows. No bodies were ever recovered. No confirmed sighting has ever been made. The FBI closed its investigation in 1979 and concluded they most likely drowned. The U.S. Marshal Service disagreed and has never closed the file. The men would be approaching 100 years old now, and the case is technically still open. The guards counted heads, so the 3 of them made heads. Richmond, Virginia, 1849. Henry Brown was enslaved, working in a tobacco factory. He had a wife and 3 children, and his wife was pregnant with a 4th. They were sold to a man in North Carolina. Brown stood at the roadside and watched the wagons carrying his family away, and there was nothing he could do about it because none of them belonged to themselves. He decided he was not going to stay, and what he came up with is, by any measure, one of the most audacious things anyone has ever done. He had a wooden crate built, roughly 3 feet long, 2 feet wide, 2.5 feet deep. A box you could not lie down in or stand up in. He took a container of water and a few biscuits, had a friend nail the lid shut, and had himself posted to Philadelphia as freight. The journey took about 27 hours. Wagon, railway, steamboat, ferry, wagon again. The box was marked to indicate which way up it should travel. Nobody paid attention. He spent long stretches upside down on his head, with the blood pounding behind his eyes, while porters threw the crate around and stacked other freight on top of it. He could not make a sound, not one, for 27 hours. In Philadelphia, the box was delivered to members of the Anti-Slavery Society. They opened it, and Brown stood up and said good morning to them. He spent the rest of his life speaking publicly against slavery in America and then in Britain, and became famous enough that people who had never met him knew his name. Nobody inspects freight, so he became freight. 3 men with spoons, 1 man in a box? The next 2 are different because the next 2 weren't a handful of people slipping out quietly. The next 2 were hundreds of men working in secret for over a year inside camps run by an army that shot people for far less. And one of them ends with a question nobody could answer for 67 years. Stalag Luft III was a German prisoner of war camp built specifically to be escape-proof, holding Allied aircrew. The huts were raised off the ground so guards could see underneath them. The soil was loose yellow sand that collapsed if you dug into it, and it was a completely different color from the gray topsoil. So any of it that appeared on the surface was obvious. So the prisoners dug 3 tunnels at once and gave them names: Tom, Dick, and Harry. The scale of it is the part that doesn't sound real. Around 600 men were involved. The tunnels went down about 9 meters before running horizontally, deep enough to be under the detection microphones. They were shored the whole way with wooden boards taken from the prisoners' own bed frames. Thousands of boards, removed a few at a time, so that men were sleeping on almost nothing. They ran electric light down there, wired into the camp supply. They built an air pump from a kit bag and hammered thousands of powdered milk tins into a ventilation duct. They laid a wooden railway with a trolley because the tunnel was too long to crawl. The sand went into long bags hung inside men's trousers, released through their pockets as they walked slowly around the compound, while other men scuffed it into the ground behind them. And a forgery department produced identity papers, travel permits, and letters, copied by hand, and tailors turned uniforms into civilian suits. On the night of the 24th of March, 1944, they opened Harry and found the exit had come up short of the tree line, in the open, in view of a watchtower. They went anyway. 76 men got out before the 77th was spotted. Now, the part the films are careful with. 73 of them were recaptured. On Hitler's direct order, 50 of those men were taken out in small groups and shot by the Gestapo. 3 made it, 2 Norwegians and a Dutchman, 600 men over a year of work, and 3 of them reached safety, and 50 were murdered for it. It is the most extraordinary escape ever organized, and it is not a story with a happy ending, and it should never be told as though it is. Colditz Castle sat on a rock in Saxony and held the prisoners the Germans considered most likely to try to escape. Men who had already got out of other camps collected in one place, which meant Colditz contained, by design, the highest concentration of extremely determined people in Europe. By late 1944, the war was clearly ending, and there was a fear among the prisoners that as it collapsed, they might not be released so much as disposed of. So 2 RAF officers, Bill Goldfinch and Jack Best, proposed building an aircraft. Not a joke. A 2-man glider, to be launched from the roof of the castle, across the river, into open country. They found a disused attic above the chapel, built a false wall out of stone and mud to hide the entrance, and worked behind it for months while other prisoners kept watch. The materials were the castle itself. Bed slats and floorboards for the airframe. Wire from the electrical system for control cables. Cotton from sleeping bags stretched over the wings. And to make the fabric taut and airtight, they painted it with boiled millet porridge from the camp rations. The plan for the launch was a bathtub filled with concrete, dropped from the roof on a pulley to fling the glider off a runway of tables. And they finished it. And then, in April 1945, American forces reached Colditz and liberated the camp. They had built an aircraft to escape a war that ended without them. Months of work, hidden behind a false wall, and the thing it was for simply stopped existing. The glider was never launched. It disappeared in the years afterwards, and no one knows what became of it. So for decades, the obvious question sat there unanswered. Would that thing actually have flown? In 2012, a team built a full-size replica from the original drawings. They put it in the air. It flew. None of these worked because somebody was strong or fast or lucky. They worked because somebody looked very carefully at the system holding them and found the gap in it. The guards counted heads, not men. Nobody inspects freight. Nobody looks at a corridor that has no exit. Nobody searches an attic they don't know exists. And all 4 took a level of patience that is genuinely difficult to sit with. A year of scraping concrete with a spoon. 27 hours of not making a sound. Thousands of bedboards, removed one at a time. And that's the part that's hard to get your head around. Not the ingenuity, the waiting. Everyone in this video was surrounded by people whose entire job was to stop them. They all worked out that being watched is not the same as being seen. And if you want the other version of this, people who couldn't get out and had to stand and hold instead, well, that one's on the screen now.